Hi everyone, my name is Isabella Rudy and today I will be discussing the march from Selma to Montgomery. A flyer reading, "We march in memory of our butchered dead. They died to prove worthiness to live." This was a flyer being held at one of the most remarkable marches in history, the Selma to Montgomery March. It is important to my listeners to be informed of this famous march because it is a time in history that has affected both the African American community and the world. In my speech, I will discuss the moments leading up to this march, the march itself, and then lastly, how the march impacted us today. I myself am African American, and this is a time in history that I've always loved to learn about, and also a time in history where even my own grandparents were there marching next to Martin Luther King Jr. to make history. And so all my life, I've really learned about this march and have loved to share it with others. So first, how did this happen? African Americans were not given the right to vote at first because there's lots of racism going on at this time. Editors of History.com stated, in the South, there is deeply entrenched with racist policies. So, due to this lack of rights, African Americans wanted to protest. So on March 18th, they brought together a protest. However, a specific advocate, Jimmy Lee Jackson, was fatally shot by police. This then made many other advocates want to protest, not just for him, but for them as well, because they felt that they weren't being heard. So this was the beginning of the Selma to Montgomery March. So now that I've discussed how the march came about, I will now discuss the march itself. This march is known as the Bloody Sunday. However, their intentions were never to be bloody or violent. It was actually a peaceful march at first, but later escalated to violence because of how police were treating the protesters. So on March 7th, 1965, around 600 people set to march from Selma to Montgomery, which is about 54 miles. According to Jeff Wallenfield, the marches didn't get far before state troopers brought out whips, nightsticks, and tear gas that rushed them right back to Selma. However, this did not stop protesters from defending what they believe is right and what they deserve. So on March 25th, they tried the second time to march from Selma to Montgomery, and this time they had tripled the amount of people, around 2,000 people marching with them. And they finally reached their goal to Montgomery on March 25th. Now that I've discussed the march itself, I will now discuss how the march impacted us today. According to archives.gov, President Lyndon Johnson lifted the barriers against Black people from voting. This then inspired the Congress to make the 15th Amendment, which granted all races and genders the right to vote. This made disassociation between white and Black people voters a lot smaller in the U.S. So today I've discussed how the Selma to Montgomery March came about, the march itself, and lastly, how the march impacted the world today. In conclusion, the Selma to Montgomery March was a remarkable time in history that displayed courage, bravery, and devotion. This shaped protesting today and also the African American community. However, the lives and blood lost in this day shall not be forgotten, but instead embraced and learned. Thank you.